I want you to picture the opening scene of, well, basically every movie about high finance you've ever seen.
You know the shot.
Oh yeah, the classic establishing shot.
The camera pans over a city skyline, sun glinting off the glass. You see steel, you see height, these massive towers jutting into the sky.
Right.
And what does that image tell you? It doesn't say people are napping here. It says serious work happens here. It screams confidence.
It absolutely does. It's the visual language of the entire 20th century economy. It's how we projected stability. But if you've been paying attention to the signals we're unpacking today, and we're looking at sources from mid-February 2026, that image might be becoming a bit of a period piece.
Like a steam engine.
Or a rotary phone, exactly.
That is a wild thought to kick things off with, because when I look at a skyline, I think permanent. I think that building is going to be there longer than I will.
But we are digging into some fascinating articles today, specifically from Jamaica Homes, dated around February 12th. And the headline that grabbed me was essentially asking, are we designing a future without offices?
It's a huge question. And what makes this deep dive so interesting is the cause of that question. Because usually when commercial property stocks start to wobble...
You think bank crisis? Recession?
Exactly. Or, as we all remember way too vividly, a pandemic.
Right. The virus that sent everyone home. We've seen that movie.
We have. But the disruption we're looking at today isn't coming from a virus. It's not coming from a bank collapse. It's coming from something much, much quieter. The sources call it a silent force.
A silent force. Okay, that sounds like a sci-fi villain.
It does, doesn't it? But we're talking, of course, about artificial intelligence.
And this is where I got a bit of a chill reading the research, because when we talk about AI on this show, it's usually, chat box writing poetry or robots flipping burgers. We don't usually connect it to concrete and steel.
Right.
So what is the connection? Why is software shaking the foundation of a 50-story office tower?
That is the mission for this deep dive. We need to bridge that gap between the digital world of AI and the very physical world of real estate. And we're not just talking about empty desks in some generic sense. We're looking at a structural shift in the global economy and, very specifically, how that hits local markets.
Like Jamaica.
Like Jamaica. So the stakes are incredibly high. We have to ask, if we design a future where the machine does the work that used to require 3/4 of people, what happens to the building?
Okay, so before we get to the doom and gloom scenario, help me understand the history here, because I think most of us just assume real estate is there. It's static. We build offices because we need a place for our laptops.
Right.
But you're saying it's deeper.
Much deeper. Real estate has always been a physical expression of behavior. It's technology frozen in concrete. Think about the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, steam engines, factories.
Exactly. When we moved from an agrarian to an industrial economy, we didn't just change how we made things, we changed our architecture. We built these massive factories. Why?
Because that's where the machines were.
The steam engine was the power source. It was heavy, it was stationary, you had to come to the machine to work.
You couldn't bring it home to your living room.
Precisely. Now, fast forward to the 20th century. The economy shifts again. We move from making things to managing things. Finance, law, insurance. What's the machine of the 20th century?
The filing cabinet, the telephone.
The paper file, the ledger. To make that efficient, you needed to process paper fast, so we stacked people on top of each other. The skyscraper was basically a vertical factory for paperwork.
I have never, ever thought of it that way. A vertical factory for paperwork. It sounds so much less romantic than Tower of Power.
It's the truth, though. The architecture solved a communication problem.
And here's the pivot. The sources we're looking at argue that communication problem.
It's gone.
It just doesn't exist anymore.
It's vaporized. And this is where we have to make a very, very sharp distinction between the disruption we saw with the pandemic remote work and this new disruption with AI.
Let's drill down on that. Because I could hear a listener right now thinking, oh, come on, in 2020, everyone said the office was dead. And yet here we are in 2026 and traffic is still terrible. How is this different?
That's a completely fair pushback. But think about the mechanics of the pandemic. That was a geographic shift. You were still doing your job. You were still the human processing the spreadsheet. You just moved your chair from the office to the kitchen table.
Right. The job remained. The location changed.
Exactly. The demand for human labor was constant. AI forces a much more uncomfortable question. It doesn't ask where you were sitting. It asks how many of you are actually needed.
Oof. Okay. That hits different.
It's an efficiency question. Look at the AI models that have come out in just the last 6 months leading up to these articles. We're not just talking about a chatbot. We're talking about agents. software that can execute tasks.
Right. Agents, that's the buzzword. These are tools that can draft a legal brief, process an insurance claim, handle a customer service query.
All without a human in the loop.
Yeah.
So let's just do the math. If you're a large corporation and you implement an AI tool that gives you a 20% efficiency gain.
Which honestly seems conservative.
Very conservative. But even at 20%, that means you need 20% fewer people. Now, translate that to real estate. Real estate is a volume game. It's about head count.
So if I don't need those 20 junior analysts.
You don't need the floor space for their desks. You don't need the 2 middle managers who supervise them. Suddenly, the lease renewal comes up and the tenant says, actually, we don't need 10 floors anymore. We need 6.
It's a domino effect.
Yeah.
And it happens quietly. It's not a factory closing with a padlock on the gate.
No news crew out front. It's a software update. And then a lease negotiation. That is the silent force.
I want to ground this, though, because global economy can feel very abstract. Our sources focus heavily on what this looks like in a specific place, Jamaica, and the corporate area in Kingston.
Yes, and this is where the theory becomes a very real, tangible economic risk.
If you look at the Kingston skyline, it's impressive. It's been growing. And a huge driver of that occupancy and the employment inside those buildings is one sector, BPO.
Business process outsourcing.
Right. And for anyone who isn't familiar, let's break that down. We're talking call centers, tech support, back office, data processing.
It's been a massive success story for Jamaica, tens of thousands of jobs, a real ladder for young professionals to enter the formal economy. Global companies outsource to Jamaica because of the skilled English-speaking workforce.
It's been a win-win. But reading this analysis from February 12, 2026, the term they use to describe the sector right now is a structural inflection point.
Which is polite economists speak for, we are in trouble.
Yeah, it suggests a huge vulnerability. Because what does a BPO actually sell? It sells process execution and customer interaction.
The 2 things AI is getting exponentially better at every single month.
Exactly. If you're a global bank in New York and you realize you can run your customer support through an AI voice agent that sounds human, operates 24/7 and never gets sick,
You're going to have a very hard meeting with your outsourcing partners.
you're going to reassess your needs. And the risk for Kingston isn't just that the company brings jobs back home. It's that the jobs, they just evaporate into the cloud.
The cloud threat. The global companies might not need thousands of seats in a building in Kingston anymore. They might only need a few hundred for the really complex, empathetic issues the AI can't handle.
And the timing of these articles was striking. They mentioned this inflection point happening right alongside a huge fiscal shift in Jamaica. Did you see the sidebar on the tax reset?
The $29.4 billion tax reset. Yes, that jumped out at me.
So put that in context.
Well, it paints a picture of an economy already under pressure. The government is looking to raise, almost $30 billion in new revenue to stabilize things. So you have a government desperate for revenue from where?
From businesses.
Yeah.
From income taxes.
Exactly. Commercial real estate pays property taxes. BPO workers pay income taxes. If those sectors contract because of a software update in Silicon Valley, the national budget takes a huge hit.
It's terrifyingly interconnected. A breakthrough in California can shake the foundation of a budget in Jamaica.
It's a perfect example of it.
Okay, I feel like we're painting a very bleak picture. The robots are coming, the buildings will be empty, but the sources aren't saying Kingston becomes a ghost town tomorrow.
No, and that is a crucial distinction. Real estate is slow. It's not the stock market. You don't see a building's value drop 30% overnight. Leases run for 5, 10, sometimes 15 years.
It's like turning an ocean liner.
It's a slow leak, not a burst pipe. But for an investor, that's almost worse. The desk farm model, the rows of cubicles, that is what's dying. But the office itself isn't disappearing, it's evolving.
And let's talk about that evolution, because I, for one, actually like going to an office sometimes. There's something about the idea of the office that matters. Mentorship, camaraderie.
The cultural capital. The sources highlight this heavily. You cannot replicate the serendipity of the water cooler in a Zoom room. You can't get mentorship from a chatbot.
I mean, I can ask it how to navigate office politics, but it's not going to buy me a coffee and tell me which VP to avoid on Mondays.
Exactly right. The loss is in professional identity formation. Junior employees learn by osmosis. They just hear how a senior partner handles a tough client on the phone. You remove that shared space, you hollow out the learning process.
If the desk farm is out, if we aren't going to the office just to type what replaces it, the notes use the term collaboration hub.
It's a shift from quantity to quality. In the past, the building was a warehouse for workers. You stacked them high. In the future, the office becomes more like a clubhouse.
A clubhouse, I like that.
Think about it. If you're doing your focused work at home with your AI assistant, why do you commute? You commute to meet, to brainstorm, for the culture.
So the physical space changes. Less desks, more breakout rooms, lounges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Companies will likely take less space, but better space. And for developers, this is the pivot. The sources argue the buildings that endure are the ones that can adapt. We're seeing the rise of mixed use as a survival strategy.
Break down mixed use for us. Why is it safer?
It's portfolio theory applied to concrete. If you build a single-purpose office tower, you are 100% exposed to that one market. If it crashes, like we're seeing, you have a stranded asset, a giant empty glass vase.
But if you mix it up,
If your building has retail on the ground floor, offices in the middle, and residential on top, you have a hedge. Office demand drops, maybe you convert a few floors to more apartments, the rigid structure breaks, the flexible one survives.
it's survival of the most flexible.
Precisely. And this leads us to the one asset class that the sources say remains the absolute anchor, the one thing AI cannot disrupt.
I think I know where you're going. An AI agent doesn't need a bedroom.
Humans do. Housing. The Jamaica Homes articles make this point very strongly. While global headlines are panicking about commercial property, the urgent crisis and the urgent opportunity is residential.
It's fascinating psychology. When the world feels unstable, what do people do?
They run to tangible assets, land, walls, a roof. It's the flight to quality. Ownership of the earth feels like a hedge against the digital unknown.
So the cranes in Kingston don't disappear. They just change what they're building. Instead of bank towers, they build apartment blocks.
That's the logical pivot. The demand for housing, for affordability, for that generational transfer of wealth through property, that is the economic bedrock.
But there was a serious caveat in the notes about this shift. A headline that read, "As Jamaica builds up, fire safety must build smarter."
This is critical. You cannot just take an office design, put beds in it, and call it an apartment. You can't just build taller residential towers without fundamentally rethinking safety.
The notes mention the Grenfell Tower tragedy in London. That's a very stark warning.
It is, but it's necessary. Grenfell was a horrific example of what happens when safety standards lag behind building density and materials. The source is arguing that as Jamaica or any market moves to build up to solve a housing crisis, the regulatory framework has to be bulletproof.
Because the stakes are different.
Yeah.
An office fire at 2 p.m. is bad, but an apartment fire at 2 a.m. on the 40th floor...
That is catastrophic.
Exactly.
The complexities of evacuation, fire suppression, cladding materials, these aren't just nice-to-haves. If the future is residential density, then safety innovation is the prerequisite.
So it's a challenge to the construction industry and to the government. We mentioned the tax reset. The government needs revenue, but it also needs to fund the bodies that enforce these codes.
It's all part of the same ecosystem. You can't have one without the other.
So let's zoom out. We started with the Tower of Power, this symbol of 20th century dominance.
Which is being hollowed out by the silent force of AI.
We looked at the BPO sector in Jamaica, a huge engine of employment, sitting at a fragile inflection point.
A potential hollow out of the middle class there if they don't adapt.
But then we found the pivot. The move from the desk farm to the collaboration hub, the shift to mixed-use resilience, and finally the retreat to the safety of housing.
It's a journey from rigidity to flexibility, from commercial ambition to human necessity.
What I'm taking away from this is that real estate isn't just about the physical world. It's a lagging indicator of how we think and live.
It is, and I think the key takeaway for me is that real estate is a long game. We get obsessed with the news cycle. NVIDIA stock is up, commercial real estate is down, but buildings last for 60, 100 years.
You have to think in decades, not quarters.
Exactly. The challenge for developers, for city planners, for homeowners is foresight. We are trying to design a property landscape for a future we cannot fully see yet.
We're pouring concrete today for a world that hasn't been invented.
That is a beautiful way to put it, and it raises a question that I think every listener should sit with. It's the thought the source material ended with, and it's been stuck in my head all day.
Lay it on us.
If the office was the stage where we performed work, where we acted out our professional lives, wore the costumes, followed the script, and that stage is shrinking, where do we go to build our professional identities next?
Wow, that hits hard. Because so much of who we are is what we do and where we go to do it. If I'm not the guy in the corner office and I'm just a guy in my living room with a laptop and a super intelligent algorithm, who am I?
Exactly. If work becomes something you do alone or something the machine does for you, where do you find that sense of belonging? Is it in a mixed-use community, a digital metaverse, or do we need to invent entirely new kinds of physical spaces?
Sounds like the architects and the sociologists need to have a very long lunch together.
They do. And they better invite the policymakers, because this isn't just about bricks, it's about the fabric of society.
Well, on that note, I want to encourage you to look at the buildings around you a little differently today. When you pass that glass tower, don't just see concrete and rebar, see the story of how we live.
And think about how that story is being rewritten right now by codes and algorithms that are invisible to the naked eye.
It is a fascinating, if slightly terrifying, time to be watching the skyline. Thanks for diving into the future with us. We'll see you on the next one.